Over the course of the first two parshiot of Chumash, we encounter a number of failed attempts at creation of human society. Last week, we read about Adam and Chava and their experience in Gan Eden, which failed. And after that, we read about Cain v'Hevel, the story of the two brothers, the first family, and that resulted in murder. This week, we encounter two other such efforts. The first society, I guess, the group of people who lived together in time of Noach, full of corruption, and that resulted in the Mabul. And at the end of the Parsha, we read about Migdal Bavel, about that attempt to build a city, and that was a failed attempt. And very often, those four events are seen and interpreted from God's perspective, which is an obvious way to read it, but also kind of puzzling. It seems to suggest that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tried to create the world or society in four different ways and failed. First with Adam and Chava, then with a family, then with a broader society, then people tried it with Migdal Bavel. It kind of raises the question as to how best to understand these so-called failed attempts. So there are a number of commentators that take a different tack and suggest that rather than read these stories as a historical account of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's attempts in creating society for people, we should really understand that what the Torah is trying to teach us is something more moral and anthropological about the way that human beings function. When seen in that light, what Adam and Chava represent is a particular approach. One might think that the true life is a life of innocence in some kind of utopian setting. And the Torah is teaching innocence doesn't last. People are flawed. It's teaching us something about human nature. And once you start that line of thinking, then we move on to Cain and Hevel, and people will say, like, it's about the family. And once you live in a family, you can live in peace, and we can grow together, and that's a pristine setting. And the Torah is saying, and this might sound kind of pessimistic, but I don't think it ends that way, even the families are flawed. There's strife within family. And we look at a society, and the society becomes corrupt. And that's the story of the beginning of this week's Parsha, and that's the story of Noach. The flow of those first three examples is to begin to give us a sense that in order for us to live life, it's not simple. It's actually difficult. We do make mistakes. And families are complicated. And societies are complicated places as well. And once you go through those three examples, it brings us to the fourth example, which I'd like to focus on, which is that of Migdal Bavel. Seen from that light, Migdal Bavel is also trying to teach us something moral and anthropological, if you will, something about human nature and its flaws in order to set us up to understand what the Torah is actually trying to teach us. So what was Migdal Bavel all about? So we are taught in the beginning of Perkei Aleph, Vayikol haaretz safa echat udvarim achadim. This is unified, sounds like it's actually a wonderful society. But then there's something interesting. There are two phrases. They say, Vayomru ish el reyehu hava nil benal v'nim v'nisrifa l'sreifa. First they say, let's make bricks, we want to build something. And then again, in the next pasuk Dalet, it says, Vayomru, they said again, Hava nivneh lanu ir amigdal v'rosho b'shamayim, v'naseh lanu shem. It's almost a separate attempt. After they build the bricks, then they say, hey, we can actually build a city. So why those two steps? So I'm following the thinking of Leon Cass, where he proposes the following. The first part of the pasuk is actually talking, the first Vayomru, is Bnei Yisrael saying, is humanity, saying that we can create. It's almost like the technological enterprise. And they actually go out and build bricks, and after they realize that, they say, you know what, maybe technology is a way in which we can solve humanity's problems. And so they think about it, and they say again, Vayomru, let us build a city. Now, why is the city built? There are two things that they say they're going to do. One is Nivneh lanu ir, and the second is Migdal v'rosho b'shamayim. So from the human side, following in Parshat Noach, the idea of building a tower is after the flood of Noach, they say, well, maybe technology can keep us safe. We can build a tower so that if there's another flood, we'll be protected. And we can build a city, and a city is going to be a civilized place where all of us can live together. And if understood in that way, the message of Migdal Bavel that the Torah is trying to convey and why it was rejected is as follows. Technology can make life tremendously better for lots of people. And the city is a very powerful vehicle to create unity. But if we think that technology and the secular city alone are going to be able to create the perfect society for all of us to live in, the Torah is telling us that too will not work. In the same way that we shouldn't think that we can live innocent lives because we're flawed as people, and families can be complicated, and society can be complicated, it is also true that the secular city and technology on their own are not going to be able to make the difference. What Parshat Noach, Breshit and Noach together are trying to set us up for is we need a Torah, we need a divine guiding light, and it is actually on the heels of all of that that we are allowed to the Torah sets us up to say, now we're ready to meet Avraham Avinu. Let me explain to you what it is that I hope for the Jewish people in terms of having the guide of the Torah, a community of Bnei Yisrael committed to Avodat Hashem in its local family way, but that through that guidance we can try to build the best society that we can, use the technology in the best possible way that we are able to be able to build the best community and to strengthen our family life. And after these two parshiot, we're ready to embark as we end this parsha and begin the next with the story of Avraham Avinu and Bnei Yisrael. Shabbat Shalom.